Welcome back to episode 3 of Why Do I Do That? Diving straight into today's question, why can't I say no even when I really don't want to do something? So we're talking here about the chronic people pleaser. And people pleaser is actually, in my opinion, not actually so much about wanting to please other people, but more so wanting to be liked by other people, which totally makes sense. Because we have this human desire to be loved and accepted. And if you think about our primal desires or the way that we were many, many years ago, we had to be part of a community in order to survive. We were so much more safe if we were a part of a community. And if we're out on our own, then we're essentially not safe. And so I feel like the reason that we get into this people-pleasing mindset is because we feel like if we don't please other people and we don't do everything that they want us to do, that they're not going to love and accept us and we're going to end up on our own. So one of the things that I ask all of my clients when we talk about this people-pleasing response is I ask them, who did you have to be and how did you have to be in order to be loved? And so most of the time with people, they'll say, well, I had to be a good girl. I had to be quiet. I had to just do what my parents wanted. Depending on your level of trauma and your upbringing, obviously the answers here can vary greatly. But the question that it comes back down to is, who did you have to be in order to be loved? And the person that you think that you have to be in order to be loved is the person that you're showing up as, and that you're then, anytime somebody wants you to do something, you're trying to fit into that box so that they will love and accept you because you think that that's what you have to be in order to be loved, not realizing that we are loved just because we exist. We are loved just because we're us. So we put these kind of parameters around, well, I have to be like this. I have to do everything for everybody. I have to help people. I have to save people. And if you've grown up in a home where you have to look after your own parents and you're the one that's responsible for their emotions and their feelings, or you've had to be responsible from a young age, you are so much more likely to be a people pleaser because you've learned that in order to be safe and in order to be loved and accepted by the people around you, you have to look after them. You have to put their needs before your own. And I learned this very intensely with my father. I learned that in order to be loved, you have to completely sacrifice yourself, your body, your needs, your thoughts. You can't speak up. You can't be a person. You have to just exist for them. You have to exist to please them. And this rippled into relationships because I believed that I existed just to please them. And it didn't just ripple into romantic relationships. It rippled into friendships where I would overgive. And I would overgive so much that I would start to get resentful. And then I would cut those people out of my life because I'd feel like they weren't giving me anything. And it was my own pattern of constantly overgiving because I believed that I needed to be this way in order to be loved. And if you don't know my story and don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about having to be this way for my dad, you can listen to episode 1 where I talk about this. I talk about my whole life story and it will make a lot more sense when you listen to that. But essentially, this people pleasing isn't really about them. It's about you. And it's about your need to be liked, your need to be loved and accepted, and the rules that you've made around, well, this is who I have to be and this is what I have to do. So my first thing that I say to people is, what if we changed the rules? What if you didn't have to do X, Y, Z in order to be loved? And what if everybody that fell away as a result of you stopping that were the people that were actually just gaining from you having no boundaries and gaining from you having no ability to say no and to push back? So one of the most common beliefs that I find in women with this people-pleasing tendency is this belief, and it sounds wild when you say it out loud, but in their subconscious mind tucked away is this belief of, I am responsible for everyone. And when you think about it, it's kind of crazy because you can't be responsible for everyone else. Like, there's all these people out there living their lives. And if you feel like you're responsible for everyone, that is like so tiring and so draining. But they have this belief of, I'm responsible for everybody. And they've got all these cords coming out of them for this person. And I feel bad for that person. I've got to help my sister and I've got to help my friend and my auntie's cousin's brother. And they're helping all these people. They've got all these cords coming out of them, just draining all of their energy. And they've got not much coming back in because they've learned to exist in context and again, subject I'll probably bang on about forever, is that so many women learn to exist in context to other people as someone's wife, someone's girlfriend, someone's daughter, not as an individual in their own right. And I definitely grew up that way. And so once we start to look at, okay, did I have to be loved? We can start to change it. We can start to be like, oh, I learned that you have to be this and that and da-da-da. And you can start to answer these questions. And then I want you to ask yourself, when you journal and when you write down these questions, the answer to these questions of this criteria, what else could be true? If I have to be a good girl in order to be loved, what else could be true? My parents couldn't handle my outbursts because they had no emotional regulation. They had no tools to emotionally regulate. It's not actually anything to do with you. It's got everything to do with them. What else could be true? If you were someone that believed that you had to be self-sacrificing in order to be loved, what else could be true is that your parents don't know how to look after you, how to meet your needs, whatever it is. I want you to think about what else could be true in that situation, because what we take on and believe as a child and then continue to carry for the rest of our life, because if you don't know this already, your beliefs are created in those first 10 years of your life. They're lodged into your subconscious mind, and then you live your entire life as if they are 100% truth. And I don't know about you, but at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I wasn't super logical. And so the beliefs that I created about this is how the world is, this is who I am, and this is who I have to be in the world, this is who I have to be in order to be loved, that childlike mind that's creating those beliefs, that doesn't really make sense to me now. That's not really working for me now. So we have to think about the things that we decided as a child so that we can then change it. And the way that we change it is, I don't have a hack for that. Again, this is something that you have to do with somebody who knows how to work with the subconscious mind, like myself or any of the therapists that I've trained, who can actually rewire your subconscious mind and change those beliefs. But you have to first become aware of what the beliefs are. So who did you have to be in order to be loved is going to give you a really clear understanding of why you think that you need to people please. The other thing as well is, for people who have been through big trauma, people pleasing also falls to me under that category of the fawn response. And the fawn response is essentially this response where somebody does something and we cower. Me fawning is like cowering, and it's falling in line with somebody in order to be loved. So it's essentially people pleasing in a nutshell. But the fawn response comes when we don't have the ability to fight or flight, or potentially sometimes even freeze. And so again, this is where in my childhood, the fawn response came in as trying to make my dad, I would try and make him love me. And if he was horrible to me, I would come in and be like, I'm sorry, I love you. And you would blame yourself and make things about yourself so that you can then survive the situation, because you don't have the opportunity to fight. You don't have the opportunity to run, and you probably don't have the opportunity to freeze. So fawn response is for people who have been through a lot of trauma. People-pleasing tendencies are very high, and I was 100% that person. I could not say no. I got to the point where I had clients. So when my practice as a healer and therapist took off, I had DMs, multiple, for a day on average, people saying to me, I'm suicidal, I don't want to live, I'm really struggling, I need to see you ASAP. And I could not say to them, and I mean, that's an intense example, but I could not say to them, like, I'm sorry, but this is when I'm available. I would say, yep, I'll squeeze you in tonight. Yep, absolutely, I'll see you, because I had no value of my own energy and time and nervous system and how I was dealing with all of these people and these clients. And I took on so many. I was seeing 15, 20 clients a week, all with big trauma. I was working nights, I was working weekends, because I could not say no, because I had this low level of self-worth. And people who are people pleasers often hand in hand have this low self-worth. And it's coming from this childhood where you believe that you have to say yes to everybody in order to be loved and accepted. And so my experience with changing this was that it again takes one little bite size at a time. One of my friends used to say to me, how do you eat an elephant? And she like, how? And she said, one bite at a time. And so I always thought of people pleasing as like this big elephant, and just one bite at a time, I would chip away at saying no to little things, and I would celebrate myself. I would be like, I understand that you're really struggling. I can see you on this day at this time. And I started to shift my perception to like, if someone is really struggling, they'll make it work, instead of being like, I have to make it work because I'm responsible for them. And that was the belief that I had too. I'm responsible for everybody. I'm responsible to heal the whole world. I'm responsible for all these people in my DMs who I don't even know. I'm responsible for them because I know how to fix it. And so this can often happen in relationships too. Well, I'm responsible for looking after my husband or my sister or whatever because they don't know how to do what I can do. They don't know how to look after themselves, or they don't know how to make dinner or whatever it is. But we actually don't give people the opportunity to do things themselves and to learn things themselves because we think that we're the only one that can do it. And that is a pretty egotistical view. And when I got out of myself and was like, oh my gosh, it's not all on me. I'm sure if they can't get a session with me, they'll find somebody else. And you step outside of that I, me, and yourself as, okay, other people can look after themselves. They can do things for themselves. They're not all helpless. You start to shift that perception and you put things back onto people. You start to find that it is so much easier to stop this people pleasing and to start to say no. The other thing as well is that I often say to people, visualize. If you wanted to do a little meditation, put on some relaxing music, lay down, close your eyes. And if you are this people pleaser person, imagine these, like I said before, these cords. You've got all of these people that are like you, as you would describe to me, probably draining you, taking from you. And they're taking from you because you're letting them take from you. You're giving it to them. So there's that part of like an active part of this equation. So I want you to, you would imagine that all of these cords are coming out and you're connecting to all of these different people who you feel like are taking from you. And what you do is you imagine that you've got like scissors and you go around and you cut all the cords off and you disconnect. And you, with love, I always say with love, send all their energy and all their problems and all their stuff back to them. Because one thing that I've learned that's helped me in this process of saying no and of sending the energy back to people is that sufferance is a gift. And I can attest to that because for the amount that I have suffered and struggled, I have received so many gifts from that because I chose, when I had that suffering and that darkness, to go, what can I do with this? What can I learn from this? How can I up-level? How can I heal from this? And if you see suffering as a gift for growth, when you cut this cord and you send this energy back to everybody, you're like, I'm just giving you back all your shit, and what you do with it is up to you. What you do with it is yours, but you're responsible for you and I'm responsible for me. And that's a mantra that I would adopt as well if you're a people pleaser. I'm only responsible for myself. Everyone else is responsible for them. I'm only responsible for me. And getting into this mindset of like, you're not there to fix anybody. You're taking away from them when you're constantly enabling them and fixing them and doing everything for them. So this is the way that I broke out of this people-pleasing tendencies, is that I would slowly, bit by bit, say no. And 100% every time I would say no, I'd be like, oh, I feel so bad. Maybe I should just, maybe I'll text them back. Maybe I'll squeeze them in. Maybe I'll just tell that friend. Even just cancelling plans with friends because I would be wrecked. I couldn't say no. I was saying yes to everything. I'd feel so bad and I want to retract my boundary and be like, oh no, actually, you know what? I can make it, or yeah, no, I can make that work, because I would be so afraid. It triggered this part of me that was like, they're not going to love me. They're not going to want to be my friend. I'm going to lose all my clients. I'll lose my business. And this is where it comes into what is the worst thing that could happen? What's your deepest fear? And so with people pleasing, the sequence that I would go through with them is, what if you stopped people pleasing? And they'd be like, people wouldn't want me in their life anymore because they wouldn't have anything, they wouldn't be getting anything from me, because people only take from you. Catch it, that's a belief. People only take from you. People don't want you in their life if they don't get anything from you. Those are all beliefs. Once we remove that, what else could be true, but also what's underneath that again? So what's the worst thing that could happen if people didn't like you? What's the worst thing that could happen? And they're like, well, I'd end up alone. And I am alone is a core belief, and it is a really strong core belief, and it's in a lot of people. There's all these people walking around thinking that they're the only ones that are feeling alone, but we're all feeling alone together. And so I am alone is one of the core beliefs, and it's one of those deepest fears. And we're so afraid to feel alone because of that biological need for connection and need for being a part of a community and being loved and being with other people. And there is nothing wrong with that. That's completely human. But the way that you go about getting that love and the way that you go about feeling like you're a part of a community and feeling connected doesn't have to be through people pleasing and self-sacrificing all of your own needs at the expense of other people. It can actually come from, and once you start to realize that, and once you start to go, my deepest fear is being alone, but in reality, am I actually going to be alone? And for some people, the answer might feel like a yes. You might be like, you know what, if I stop doing everything for everyone, they probably are just going to leave me and I'm going to end up being alone. But what's the worst thing that could happen then? And most of the time, this is a pivotal moment where they're like, I guess I would make new friends or I would find new connections. And that is the truth. Once you stop this behavior, because the people that you're attracting into your life and the people that you are wanting to spend your time with and the people that you have, I guess, whether it's be family or friends having your life that are benefiting from this are the kind of people that probably won't want you to set a boundary. And this is why people don't heal, because they go, that's too much. That's too scary. I'm not going to cut anybody out. It's too scary. It's too much. But the reality is they're struggling every single day. They hate people pleasing. They're self-sacrificing. They're run down. They're burnt out. They feel like absolute shit. And when the solution feels hard, they're like, you know what? I'm just going to stay in the comfort. I'm just going to stay with what I know because it's what I know. And so this is why when I talk about healing, I say it's for brave people, because it is for brave people. It is for brave women, because it is so hard to just go, you know what? I'm going to stop self-sacrificing. I'm going to start only being responsible for me, pushing back on people, and the right people will stay and the wrong people will go. That is so scary. We're so afraid to lose people. Again, biologically, it's wired into us. And so you have to go against everything to actually cut ties and to actually stand in that. But out the other side of that, I don't have a single client who hasn't done that, who hasn't then been like, I met the love of my life when I left this shitty relationship where I was overgiving, or I've got my beautiful soul friendship girlfriends now, or the dynamic has changed with my family. I told them that I wasn't putting up with this anymore, and surprise, surprise, they were like, that's fine. We didn't ask you to do that. And it was actually in our own mind. So there are so many different ways that it can go. And I think that that's the hardest thing, is to be like, there are actually different realities that exist. It's not just I put the boundaries up and I lose everybody. What else could be true? And I'm going to say that 1,000 times until it's just like in your brain, every episode, what else could be true? And what else could be true is that there are infinite realities. There are infinite possibilities once you start to change your beliefs, and once you start to change, therefore, your perception, because your beliefs shape your perception of the world around you. So once you start to change these beliefs about who you have to be in order to be loved, and once you stop self-sacrificing, and self-sacrificing to me is like, if it feels like a no and you say yes, you're sacrificing yourself and your own needs for another person. Simple as that. If it feels like a no and you say yes in your body, that's the sign that you have, that you've moved into someone else is more important than you. And it can sound a little bit egotistical, I guess, because we're like, you've got to think about other people. And I'm not saying you go out there and be awful to people and cancel plans just because you don't feel like it. And there's a balance with everything. But if you're a chronic people pleaser, and this is where there's this thing that I call leaning into the opposite. And it's a technique that I use with my clients. And essentially the idea is that if you've been a chronic people pleaser and it's impossible for you to say no, you actually need to lean so far into the opposite for a short period of time before you're able to integrate this part. So what that looks like is you can't say no to anyone. All of a sudden you say no to everything. And you're like, no, it's a no. And you have this big period of rest where you just are so selfish and you pour everything into yourself and you just say, I'm sorry, but it's a no. It's just a no. Don't even have excuses. And then eventually what happens is you find this middle ground, and everyone comes back and finds this middle ground. And this is in anything in healing. If something feels really uncomfortable for you, you have to go so far into the opposite direction until that feels so normal that you can find your middle ground. And what eventually happens is then they get to the point where they weigh it up and they're like, actually, you know what? I do feel like doing that. And they can say no when it's relevant, and they can say yes when they want to, and they find this balance. But you'll never be able to just find that balance straight away. I've not seen it yet in a client. You'll never just be able to slowly integrate it. A lot of the time what happens is you have to lean really far into the opposite, and then you're going to eventually find and land in that middle ground. So leaning into the opposite, looking at the beliefs, cutting those cords with people, sending back that responsibility to them is the way that I would start to heal these chronic people pleaser tendencies. So if you know anybody who is a chronic people pleaser and who's been trying to break this cycle, please share this episode with them, forward it on to them, and thank you for listening.